Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and this is The Win Place Show, a podcast devoted to all aspects of horse racing and handicapping that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Now listen, today is Christmas Day for a lot of us in horse racing because it's the day we've been waiting for all year. That's right, the Breeders Cup fields have officially been announced. They've been drawn. The post positions have been decided. And this episode is devoted entirely to previewing and picking the 5 Breeders Cup Juvenile races that will be taking place on Friday, November 5th. Now, before we break it all down, just a quick reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you can't get enough Breeders' Cup coverage, we also have video episodes corresponding with each of these, obviously, but then we also have another video and episode that goes to all 9 of the Breeders' Cup races that are taking place on Saturday for the 3-year-old and up division. Additionally, if you missed it, we have an interview with NBC's Donna Brothers. That's on the YouTube channel as well as in our podcast feed. And tomorrow on Wednesday, we'll have an episode devoted to the top 10 Breeders' Cup races since 2000. The best place to get all of that is to follow the Win Play Show podcast, subscribe to the Win Play Show YouTube channel, head over to amalfimedia.com, or follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. Finally, make sure to interact with us on Twitter and YouTube to let me know what you think of the races and how you see the big weekend in Del Mar breaking down. And make sure to share with your fellow horse racing fanatics on social media. Okay, enough of that. Let's dive into the races, and we're going to preview all 5 juvenile races. And just to let you know, for those of you who've been watching for a while, you know that I typically like to talk a fair amount about each horse and try to give you a lot of depth and description in this. When we're getting through 5, I want to be conscientious of people's time. So I'm going to go over the field, and then I'm really just going to focus on the top 3 or 4 horses, maybe give you a long shot or 2, and move to the next race. But I still want to give you that in-depth analysis that you've come to expect from the Win Play Show. So let's dive into the first of those races, and that is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. And that post time is going to be at 5:50 p.m. Eastern, and that's a 5-furlong race. Obviously, all of these races are for 2-year-olds, and this one is on the turf. So let's take a look at the field for the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And going in at the number 1 post, we have Twilight Jet, trained by Michael O'Callaghan and jockeyed by Lee Roach. Then Coffee Maker, trained by Wesley Ward and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Go Bears Go, trained by David Loughnane and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Vertiginous, trained by Brian Meehan and jockeyed by Javier Castellano. Hierarchy, trained by Hugo Palmer and jockeyed by Ocean Murphy. Twilight Gleaming, another Wesley Ward horse, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Then Armor, British horse, trained by Richard Hannon and jockeyed by Ryan Moore. Then you have the morning line favorite, Averly Jane, a third Wesley Ward horse, jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione, going off at 5-2. Then you have One Timer, trained by Larry Ravelli and jockeyed by E. Baird. Time to Party, trained by Pete Miller and jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Darien, trained by Christophe Clement and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then finally, on the 12-hole, Run Curtis Run, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Louis Saez. So let's talk a little bit about this race and how I see this playing out. And the favorite is Averly Jane. And Averly Jane, I think, is the class of this field. I saw some people talking after the post positions were announced that they were a little concerned about the draw of the post position. It's not ideal, and I'll tell you why. A lot of times at Del Mar, you really want to see and you really want to look at that inside post position as being ideal because that first turn comes up on you pretty quickly in those 5-furlong sprints. So the fact that Averly Jane's a little further out in that 8 slot, it might be concerning. We'll have to really try to use up a lot of early speed to get to the inside. So that is something to keep in mind. What I would say is the horses on the inside are just simply not really the caliber of Averly Jane. The best horses are in the middle to the outside of the post positions. So it's not as if she has her nemesis or his nemesis, I should say, on the inside of him. So that's something just to keep in mind. I do think Twilight Jet might be a viable option there, breaking from the number 1 post position. Armor is another horse that I will talk very briefly about. This is a horse going off at 6-1. And this is a horse that has shown improving efforts and should like the 5 furlongs. I think when this horse has occasionally gotten stretched out a little bit longer than 5 furlongs and not done quite as well, I actually think going to 5 furlongs is going to fit this horse quite nicely. So I like Armor quite a bit in this position. I think it's 6-1. You're getting pretty decent value on a horse that I think has done very well overseas and brings a lot of class to the field. You'll see one of the horses, One Timer, is going off at 4-1. This is a horse that had a decent race on turf, but really just one race on turf, has been better on synthetic, actually. So there's some question about the surface and whether this is the ideal surface for One Timer. I really just don't like the odds there at 4-1. The one time that it did run on, that he ran on turf, ran a decent speed number from a U.S. time form figure. It ran a 95. But, compared to the rest of the class, that's just not going to get it done in this particular race. So I'm a little bit out on One Timer at that 4-1 price. Just don't love it. Additionally, Twilight Gleaming, that's another horse that has shown kind of middling speed figures. I will say it beat Del Mono last time out. And Del Mono is a good horse that finished on the board at the Princess Margaret in Ascot earlier this year. So a quality horse in terms of some of the competition is beaten. But just, again, don't love that price at 4-1. If you're looking on the inside, I'd almost say something like, as I mentioned earlier, Twilight Gleaming, or I'm sorry, Twilight Jet. There's 2 Twilights. There's too many Twilights. But Twilight Jet on the inside actually has decent speed. But I'll give you the horse that I like on the inside. And this is where I would go for some value on your card if you're playing exotics, if you're playing exactas, trifectas. And that's Go Bears Go. This is a horse I like quite a bit, breaking from the number 3 hole. Yes, it had a clunker last time out, but it was on yielding turf. I think this horse tends to respond better on good or firm turf. So I think being at Del Mar, you're going to get a better surface for this horse. And you're going to see a cutback in distance. This horse was running 7 furlongs. This is not a 7 furlong horse. This is a 5 furlong horse breaking from the inside. I like the speed there. I really like Go Bears Go underneath. So ultimately, how do I see the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint playing out? Well, a lot of people will say this is going to be a very chalky Breeders' Cup. And I don't have chalk all the way around. But in this particular race, I do have Averly Jane to win. I have Armor to place, and I have Go Bears Go to show. I think Go Bears Go is where you're going to need to head for some value in this particular race, but Armor gives you nice value underneath, even in an exacta with Averly Jane going off at 6-1. So with that race down, let's head to the next race on the card, which is the Breeders' Cup NetJets Juvenile Fillies. And that post time is 6:30 p.m., and this is 1 1/16 for 2-year-olds, obviously, and this is for the ladies, for the fillies. And this race is on dirt. And this is a very small field, but let's quickly take a look at this field. And you will see in the number 1 post position, you have Desert Dawn, trained by Phil D'Amato and jockeyed by Ricardo Gonzalez. And then Hidden Connection, trained by William Calhoun, jockeyed by Raylu Gutierrez, who I believe is making his Breeders' Cup debut. And then Sequest, trained by Dallas Stewart and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Tarabi, trained by Sherry DeVoe and jockeyed by Javier Castellano. And then you have the 2 favorites, Juju's Map, trained by Brad Cox and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. And then Echo Zulu, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Interestingly enough, that decision to have Echo Zulu jockeyed by Joel Rosario, bit of a curveball by Asmussen. It had been expected that Ricardo Santana Jr. was going to ride that horse. Unfortunately, Ricardo Santana Jr. is going through a very rough stretch right now. If you listen to my podcast, you know he went 0 for 81 at Keeneland. And so Asmussen takes him off of Echo Zulu, puts Joel Rosario on Echo Zulu, who, by the way, is just a dominant horse. And so for those of you who might be watching or listening to this and you've not watched a lot of horse racing to this point, there's a ton of buzz around Echo Zulu. This is a filly that has a ton of speed and has dominated the competition to this point. I will say there has been some question, I think, in recent days and weeks that perhaps the competition that Echo Zulu has gone up against has not been as spectacular as maybe we thought. Some of the follow-up races from some of the horses she beat have shown that those horses are kind of disappointing. And they're not necessarily as strong. That Spinaway stakes victory looks a little less impressive sometimes. So I think there's some questions there on Echo Zulu. But certainly a great horse and a great filly. Also has not done a mile and a 16th. Longest distance has been a mile at this point. I don't think stretching out is going to be a problem, especially since it's just another half furlong to the mile and a 16th. But it is something to consider that this filly is going to uncharted depths in terms of distance. Now, the horse immediately on her inside is Juju's Map, 7-2. This is where I'm going to be going for this race. I really love Juju's Map. I like the break. I like the post position, breaking from the 5-hole, having Echo to her outside. I like that actually quite a bit. I think Juju's Map is a horse that can do the distance. We've seen it do the distance. She's done the distance recently, just last time out at Keeneland. Looked really good in that race. And she's got a lot of speed, too. I mean, people want to talk about Echo Zulu. Juju's Map's got a lot of speed. So I don't think you can discount Juju's Map. I know the horse can do the distance. I know she's got the speed. I mean, some of her numbers at a mile earlier this year when she was running that distance were just out of this world. I mean, she was running miles 3-4 seconds faster than the rest of her competitors and blowing people away. So this is a horse I think that is just peaking, quite frankly, at the right time and really filling in. So I really like Juju's Map. Hidden Connection's a horse that I like at 4-1. I don't love that value. I think people tend to think this is kind of a top 3, with Hidden Connection being the other horse that's kind of right there in terms of value. I don't necessarily love it. I think Hidden Connection is a good horse, not a great horse, and I think Juju's Map is considerably better. So I am kind of fading Hidden Connection there a little bit. Where I would go for value in this race, though, is Tarabi. This is a horse that has shown real improvement between races. You've seen this horse continually getting faster, turning in better and better figures, and really holding its own. And additionally, the workouts that this horse has turned in at Keeneland recently has been spectacular. So I really like Tarabi, especially. You're getting, I think, 12-1 on Tarabi there. I like that a lot. And so I think that's where I would go for a little bit of value on this card. So how do I see the NetJets Juvenile Fillies breaking out? Well, I have Juju's Map to win. I have Echo Zulu to place. And I have Tarabi to show. Again, I think that's where you're going to find your value is underneath at the show. But I do think this is going to be a 2-horse race between Juju's Map and Echo Zulu. And I just think Juju's Map, I just have a feeling, is going to deliver the upset over the presumptive next great filly in Echo Zulu. All right, well, let's move to the Breeders Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. And that's the third of the 5 races, and this will be the post time of 7:10 p.m. Eastern, and this is a mile distance, and this is a full 14-horse field. So let's take a look at this field that, like I said, is a full 14 horses, and this is quite a field. I mean, this might be the Juvenile, which is the 4th race, is quite good, but I really like this Juvenile Fillies Turf. So let's start off with post position 1. We have Pizza Bianca, trained by Christophe Clement and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Then Cairo Memories, trained by R.B. Hess Jr. and jockeyed by Kent DeSormo. Cachet, trained by George Bohe and jockeyed by Louis Saez. Turner Loose, a Brad Cox horse, jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Bubble Rock, another Brad Cox horse, jockeyed, I should say, by Irad Ortiz Jr. Hello You, an Irish horse, trained by David Loughnane and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Consumer Spending, Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Sail By, a horse trained by Leah Giramati and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. Koala Princess, trained by Arnaud Delacour and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Helen's Wall, trained by Phil D'Amato and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Haughty, another Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. And then Malavav, trained by Francis Henri Graffard and jockeyed by Ryan Moore. And then Mise en Scene, trained by James Ferguson, jockeyed by Ocean Murphy. And then finally, on the 14th post position, you have California Angel, trained by George Arnold III and jockeyed by Rafael Barrano. And that is the field. And that's quite a field. And let me start where I just finished with California Angel. This is the sentimental horse. Everybody loves this horse. First of all, everybody liked California Chrome. She's a progeny of California Chrome and recently won the Jessamine at Keeneland. It was a big upset. I think people just absolutely love the trainer, George Arnold III. He's just seems like a very authentic, good person, a great horseman, somebody who cares about his horses, does things the right way. You love to see people like that win and succeed. I hate the post position. I mean, my heart sunk when it was the 14th post position for the horse because and I'll be honest, putting sentimentality aside, I really like this horse to at least come and hit the board in this race. And man, I had to really change my thinking when I saw that 14th post position. I felt terrible, but I just don't think California Angel is going to be much of a factor from out of that outside post position. That's going to be a lot to ask in this particular race. So where am I going in this race? Well, I'll be honest. One of the first things I'm looking at is Bubble Rock, the Brad Cox horse. This horse is a monster. I absolutely love Bubble Rock, and I think Bubble Rock has run some spectacular races to this point. And I think, last time out was just really dominant at 6 furlongs. Now, this is going to be a step up in distance. There's no doubt about it. The horse has run 5.5 furlongs to 6 furlongs, has only run one graded stakes race, but the speed figures this horse is putting out is pretty much so unlike anything else in the field, with the exception of Pizza Bianca. And so I think at 8-1 odds, I understand why the odds are there at 8-1 because there are some question marks about distance, but you got Giants Causeway in the background for this horse in terms of its pedigree. You look at the sire and the dam, they both had success on route courses. So, and turf was very good. So I think there's something there. I think Bubble Rock can go distance. Brad Cox is on a roll just for the last couple of years, let alone this year. So I think that's where, for value, I just really love Bubble Rock. I think it's a really good value for the price. So where else would I look? Well, I'd look at Koala Princess. And this is a horse going off at 6-1 that you're seeing showing improvement every time out and doing it against slightly better competition, better speed paces. The overall quality of the race and the horses around it has gotten better. And so I think Koala Princess, again, 6-1, you're not getting huge value there, but I trust Joel Rosario on turf. So I love the jockey. And I think that this is a horse, again, that's turning in some really strong speed figures and improving every time out. And as I've talked a lot about with juveniles, that's what you're looking for. Constant improvement every time out. I think you're seeing that from Koala Princess. So I do want to touch on a couple of the favorites, Pizza Bianca being one of them. I don't love the inside rail in this particular case for Pizza Bianca. have a tendency to maybe get shuffled back a little too far potentially. Typically does not sit on the lead. And so I don't think it's going to be in that position where, okay, they use the inside rail to get out on the lead. Going to be perhaps shuffled a little further back, might get trapped inside. That's always a concern, especially if that inside hole does not open up when they come around the turn. So that's, again, just a concern that I have there. Certainly a very good horse and has very strong speed figures, has posted some really great efforts, but I'm just worried about the type of ride it's going to get from that inside position. Consumer spending. This is a horse that I'm not necessarily sold on because of the competition it's run up against. And I say that with all due respect. This is a horse that ran at Laurel, which is right up the road from where I live, not all that long ago. But when you look at the level of competition, the pace figures of some of those races that she's gone up against, just does not really hold a candle to what some of these other fillies have gone up against to this point. And so I do wonder a little bit about consumer spending. Now at 8-1, I don't hate that value. I think that's fine. But I think that's just something that is why I'm a little hesitant maybe to pull the trigger on consumer spending. Now Malavath is also going off at 8-1. That's a horse that I would avoid. There's decent value if you look at certain things. There's reasons to like Malavath a great deal, but this horse loves soft turf, and you're not going to get soft turf at Del Mar. It just is not going to happen. And I think that's a question with a lot of these European horses. Interestingly, some of them, which we'll get to, I think in the for the Breeders' Cup for the 3-year-old and up episode, some of them actually perform better on firm turf. But that's always a question with European horses. How do they perform on different types of turf? Malavath seems to really like soft and yielding turf. You're not going to get soft and yielding at Del Mar. The weather is perfect right now this time of year. It's going to be firm. And so I'm a little worried in that regard. Miss Unseen at 6-1. Again, a horse that the speed figures just are not there. The top end speed, the finishes are there, doing well, winning races, but just the speed figures when compared to some of the other horses in the field just are not there. So how do I see the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf breaking out? Well, this is where I'm going to take a little bit of a swing at some value, and I'm going to go Bubble Rock to win. I'm going to go Koala Princess to place, and I'm going to go Pizza Bianca to show. I think this is a race where you can really find some value. And even if you go, Matthew, I don't know about Bubble Rock, Koala Princess at 6-1 is still giving you, I think, really nice value. So if you want to move that horse up to the win slot, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm just going to take a little bit of a chance with Bubble Rock there at 8-1. Really like the odds, and I'll roll the dice on projecting up to a mile. So let's move to the TVG Juvenile. And this is obviously with a lot of big names that we've seen. And this is going to be a post time of 7:50 p.m. Eastern. And let's take a look at this field. And it's a 1.16 miles on dirt for 2-year-olds. And this is a 12-horse field, starting with the inside post position of Jack Christopher, the Chad Brown horse jockeyed by Jose Ortiz, who is the morning line favorite. Then Jasper Great, Japanese horse, trained by Hiduki Mori and jockeyed by Yuichi Fukunaga. And then you have Oviate Class, trained by Keith DeSormo and jockeyed by his brother Kent DeSormo. Then Papa Cap, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Joe Bravo. Double Thunder, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. American Sanctuary, trained by Chris Davis and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Giant Game, trained by Dale Romans and jockeyed by Joe Talamo. Barossa, one of the first of 3 Bob Baffert horses, jockeyed by Juan Hernandez. Then you have the second Bob Baffert horse, Pinehurst, jockeyed by John Velasquez. Then you have Command Performance, another Todd Pletcher horse, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. In the 11th hole, you have Tough to Tame, another Chris Davis horse, jockeyed by Sophie Doyle. And then finally, on the 12th slot, you have Corniche, the final Bob Baffert horse, jockeyed by Mike Smith. So that is the field for the TVG Juvenile. And let's talk about this. Jack Christopher, 9-5. This is a horse breaking from the inside post position. The reason I like Jack Christopher here, speed. This horse can run. If you have not been following horse racing, you want to make sure you turn in at 7:50 p.m. Eastern time and watch this race, because Jack Christopher is not just the fastest 2-year-old this year. He's not just the fastest 2-year-old from last year. He's the fastest 2-year-old we've seen in 4 years. This is a horse that is dominant. Now, is this horse going to be as dominant as a 3-year-old? I don't know. It's all about projections. Sometimes other horses in the crop end up catching up. But for right now, man alive, is Jack Christopher worth the price of admission. Turns in fast fractions and can just blaze. So I really like Jack Christopher quite a bit here. And they're going to push the button and they're going to go on Jack Christopher. Now, on the other end of the spectrum and on the complete other end of the gate, you have Corniche, who's the second favorite. And this is the Baffert horse that's been running out in California and running against, decent competition and putting it away. Corniche has been running slower fractions, though, than Jack Christopher. If you just look at the fractions in the quarter of miles, it doesn't have the speed that Jack Christopher has. I also don't like that far outside post position. And so I just have some questions there. Command performance. This is a horse that essentially made hay. It's going off at 5-1, and quite frankly, got its reputation just by finishing in the same zip code as Jack Christopher. I don't love the post position here for command performance either, and so I'm a little worried about that at 5-1. Again, I don't love the value. Very good horse, does have speed, can at least hang with Jack Christopher theoretically, but I just don't think is there. Now we're going to hit a couple of horses that I really like. And this is, again, I like Jack Christopher up top, but this is where I would find a lot of value is underneath. Pinehurst. Let's start there. 8-1. I love this horse. This horse digs in and goes. This horse has been in duels with other horses. This horse has put away good competition. I really like this horse, and it's not run in a little while, so it's had a little bit of a break. It's not, it's not going to be worn out. This is not like a Steve Asmussen 2-year-old that gets run all the time. So kind of the opposite of that. I think you're going to see a big improvement from Pinehurst. I know if you look at the speed figures, there's a gap between Pinehurst and some of the other horses. I think that's only because Pinehurst hasn't run since that last time out. We typically see continuous improvement from these juveniles, especially the elite 2-year-olds. And I think Pinehurst, I love that value at 8-1. I'm all over that horse. So that's a horse I really like quite a bit. I'll tell you another horse that I think you got to include on your exotics, which is Oviatt Class. This is a horse, I like this horse a lot. This is a horse that is going to remind you, again, if you've not watched a lot of racing, it's going to remind you of the 2009 Kentucky Derby winner, Mind That Bird. This is a horse that goes way back and then puts on a furious run late. This is a horse that is bred for distance, can do distance. That's not a problem. Do I think Oviatt Class is going to win? No. But with Jack Christopher running a crazy pace, I love for Oviatt Class to just run into some speed. I love for this horse to just start gobbling up horses like Pac-Man and just passing them coming down the stretch, because that's what Oviatt Class does even under slow conditions. When Corniche sets really slow fractions, Oviatt Class was still able to finish third by making up a ton of ground there at the end. I think Kent DeSormo learned something that last time out. This is a West Coast horse, knows the surface, I should say. I like Oviatt Class to hit the board, and at 20-1 presents great value. And listen, the other horse that people are going to look at is Papa Cap, which is the gun runner progeny. I like the post position. The horse has shown a lot of class, a lot of guts. Had kind of a nice bounce back performance last time out, finishing second at Corniche. I'm not sure this race sets up great for Papa Cap though. So I'm a little hesitant, but I do like the horse. I think, if you're going deep on exotics, Superfectas, Quinellas, I think, Papa Cap is there as a potential play. At 15-1 too, I like the value. So how do I see the TVG Juvenile breaking out? Well, listen, I told you, it's going to be a chalky Breeders' Cup. I'm avoiding it where I can, but I have Jack Christopher to win. I have Pinehurst to place. I have Oviatt Class to show. I love those two underneath in this particular race. So let's go to the final race on the card, which is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and this is the post time of 8:30 p.m., and this is a mile, obviously on the turf. Let's take a look at this full 14-horse field. In the number 1 hole, you have Modern Games, trained by Charles Appleby, jockeyed by William Buick. Then Albar, another Charles Appleby horse, jockeyed by Frankie Dettori. Dakota Gold, trained by Danny Gargan and jockeyed by Louis Saez. Tis the Bomb, trained by Ken McPeak and jockeyed by Brian Hernandez Jr. Slipstream, a Christoph Clement horse, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. McKinnon, Doug O'Neill's horse, jockeyed by Juan Hernandez. Great Max, trained by Michael Bell, jockeyed by John Velasquez. Glonthon, I think there were some issues at the post position, the post drawing about the pronunciation of this horse. I think I got it right though. Glonthon, trained by Aidan O'Brien and jockeyed by Ryan Murphy. Stolen Base, trained by Mike McCarthy and jockeyed by Umberto Rispoli. Portfolio, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. And then we have 3 Mark Cassie horses in a row. Grafton Street, who's jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. Credibility, jockeyed by Mike Smith. Coinage, jockeyed by Florent Giroux. And then finally, we have the favorite, Dawabi Legend, trained by Hugo Palmer and jockeyed by James Jack Doyle. So that's the field. And like I said, it is quite a field. And I guess we should start with Dawabi Legend. Dawabi Legend is a great horse, but I would say a couple of things. One, hasn't won the last 2 times out, hasn't gone a mile, and it's a bad post position. You put those 3 things together, and I'm going to fade the horse. So I don't love that. And I think that's where you can find a lot of value because the favorite, I think, just got a really bad post draw. And so I think you have to look somewhere else because I think Dawabi Legend, like I said, there are a lot of things to like. The horse has incredible speed, but I had some questions on distance. It had not won the last 2 times out, although obviously going up against very good competition over in Europe. And then the post position was just kind of the nail in the coffin. So let's shift to some other horses that I'm looking at in this race. And let's go to Albar. This is a horse that has improving speed numbers. This is a horse that's won 4 races in a row over different conditions of turf and has done it with class. I absolutely love the value here. Charles Appleby has an amazing stable of horses. That's a name you can trust. Some of you may be more familiar with Aidan O'Brien. Charles Appleby is just a phenomenal trainer. Anybody who follows European racing knows that. So absolutely love the value there for Albar at 6-1. Modern Games is a very good horse. I don't love that number 1 post position given its running style. I have a feeling it might get pushed back a little too far. I also just worry about how juveniles respond to that sort of thing. Also has not gone a mile yet, so we're pushing distance, which sometimes can be an issue. Although I think the horse is bred for a mile plus, so I don't think that's long-term a problem, but just hasn't done it yet. And at 5-2, you're looking at pretty short odds for a horse that has not proved it yet. Only 1 graded stakes race as well. So some questions maybe about the caliber of competition Modern Games has gone up against to this point. So some other horses that I think present some really nice value. Portfolio Company is an interesting horse at 6-1. I don't love the odds there. This is a horse that finished 2nd to Coinage and 2nd to Annapolis, who scratched from this field. Annapolis probably would have been one of the 2 or 3 favorites. So this is a horse that tends to be just kind of right behind some really good horses. But like I said, don't necessarily love the odds on Portfolio Company at 6-1. Now, a horse that I do love the odds for is Dakota Gold. This is a horse that has only been on turf once, but had an absolute huge effort, beat 2 other horses that are in this field in that race. You're getting a horse at 8-1. I think this is a horse that, is only going to get better. This horse ran a monster race the first time and only time on turf. Now you're coming back at a big time race. I really like Dakota Gold in this spot. I think you're going to see an improvement. I think you've yet to see the best from this horse. So I absolutely love Dakota Gold at 8-1. Another horse that I think is a good horse is Tiz the Bomb. I think Tiz the Bomb is probably going to take on a lot of money, unfortunately. At 8-1, I don't hate the value there. I think that's a horse that would hit the board potentially at 8-1. I have a feeling it's going to get bet down to like 6-1, 5-1, just because of name recognition and some of the connections. I think it's a good horse, but not an elite horse. And then Slipstream. This is a horse that step up in distance, but at 12-1, it's beating some really nice horses. It's beating some horses that are running in some other Breeders' Cup races like Run Curtis Run. So this is a horse that's gone up against some decent competition. The step up in distance is worth monitoring, but at 12-1, I think you could do worse in finding value to hit the board there. So how do I ultimately have the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf playing out? Well, listen, to win, again, chasing some value here, but I really love Dakota Gold. So I have Dakota Gold to win. I have Albar to place. I have Modern Games to show. I think Modern Games is a very, very good horse, and I think it's going to hit the board, but I just don't love that inside post position. I have some questions about distance, so we'll see. But I do think it's probably too classy of a horse to keep off the board. But that's how I see the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf breaking down. Okay, well, that's it for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile preview. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and remember to check out my preview for the Saturday Breeders' Cup races of the 3-year-old and older division, as well as my interview with NBC's Donna Brothers, and come back on Wednesday for my top 10 Breeders' Cup races since 2000. We have you covered for all the content you need to quench your thirst for the Breeders' Cup and beyond. Finally, just a reminder to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Play Show podcast on the platform of your choice. And subscribe to the Win Play Show on YouTube, in addition to following me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And check out AmalfiMedia.com for my picks for the entire Breeders' Cup card. And you can read along, read some of my analysis, get all of my picks. And we got you covered for the big Saturday at Del Mar, where the surf meets the turf. Until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a wonderful and safe Breeders' Cup weekend, a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you that it's now post time.